We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when adults are afraid of the light. Park City, Utah, home to just 8,300 residents, is rated the second wealthiest town in the United States, with hundreds of Olympic athletes and celebrities. Park City has both the #1 rated ski resort in North America and also the largest ski resort in the U.S., with over 400 miles of hiking and biking trails. The Park City school system is rated the best in the state, and Park City High School ranks in the top 2% nationally. Park City also has an unspoken teen suicide death rate, which is more than 100 times greater than the national average. At the time of this publication, at least 8 Park City children are known to have died from suicide from 2016 to 2022. This is amongst the highest death rate of any kind anywhere. This is the story of 3 of these teen suicide deaths out of the 400 students of the Park City High School class of 2021. Many years of painstaking research has uncovered the story told to the press and the public is very different to the story told by the police records and other official documents of these 2 children's deaths. This is not a story of one person's word against another's. This is the story of Park City officials' statements against their own, and the children who died as a result. This is the story where Park City officials chose silence over safety, deceit over death, and even accolades and false allegations over accountability. This is the story Park City officials did not want the public to know. Park City, Utah, September 2016. In the first few days of the new school year, 2 13-year-old Park City students suddenly died in their sleep within 48 hours of each other from a deadly new chemical known as pinky. Their deaths appeared in headlines nationwide. At that time, pinky was not an illegal drug, which led children to believe it was safe. Pinky was so new it could not be found on the internet under that name. However, pinky did meet the criteria of a hazardous material which could kill on skin contact. This presentation contains direct quotations, screenshots, and video recordings of official documents and published news articles. Many of these documents are readily available on the internet or in public records for independent verification. This is the first time this information has ever been collected into a single location for side-by-side comparison. These direct quotations are provided for the viewer to develop their own conclusions. On Sunday, September the 11th, 2016, police records from the scene of the first Park City student to die while using pinky document that this deceased student reported having pinky in the school bathroom with other students. This police report also states that police and school officials discussed the possibilities of pinky being used at the school, and that the police and school decided to jointly issue a community drug alert about pinky. By the morning of September the 12th, school and police officials had the names of at least 20 students they believed to be at risk of death from pinky, and they never told any of their parents or the hospital. And late that evening, the school and police sent out their community drug alert via email, showing they knew Pinky could kill on skin contact, and that the children thought Pinky was safe. And then, on September the 13th, immediately after the second student died from Pinky, Chief Carpenter and Superintendent Conley convened a press conference, where they repeatedly denied any correlation between Pinky and the deaths of these two students.
As we had no indications of why either of these young men had passed away. There was no signs, nor did we find any signs of drug use in either of these homes.
Within hours after the second student died from Pinky, Park City officials are directly quoted by the press, claiming to the public, quote, "There were no signs, nor did we find any correlation between the deaths of the two students and Pinky." End quote. There is no imminent physical safety threat to other students. However, several years after the deaths of these two students, official documents began to surface, which clearly show that these public officials knew that Pinky had been circulating amongst Park City students before the first student died. And over the next 48 hours, before the second student died. These records also clearly document that local officials believed this student and 20 others, all listed by name, were in danger of death from this lethal chemical. These officials knew these students and their parents thought their children were safe, when they were not. And these officials' statements to the press and in sworn testimony were clearly false. In the years following the deaths of these two students, these public officials' privileged access to the press has controlled a narrative which is directly contradicted by their own quotations in official documents, and continues to deceive the public. Sunday morning, September 11, 2016. At 9:52 a.m. on September 11, 2016, Park City Police were called to the scene of a 13-year-old student who had died in his sleep. At the scene of the deceased student, Park City Police records show they found the student died while using Pinky. He had Pinky in the school bathroom days earlier. He had Pinky in the presence of other students, and was texting this via social media to another 13-year-old student, Ryan Ainsworth. At that time, both boys' parents believed their children hadn't had any contact with each other for over 5 months. Nearly 2 years after this student died, the police investigation report of his death was discovered. Park City Police Department Incident Report 16-16001, September 11, 2016 at 9:52 a.m. At the scene, Park City Police found on the deceased student's computer a Google chat message to Ryan Ainsworth. The message indicated that the deceased student was planning and taking in entirely the leftovers he had of a drug they referred to as Pinky. The deceased student wrote to Ryan, "Remember how much was in it after the bathroom at school? I did one pinky since then, and I just finished it. The last text message was from Ryan at 12:17 a.m. on September 11th. Upon discovery of this Google chat, the deceased student's father said he was going to call Ryan's father. Park City Police specifically told the family, "Do not contact Ryan's family, and don't tell anyone their child died while using Pinky." So Ryan and his schoolmates were led to believe their friend died from asthma. Park City Police Department Lieutenant Darwin Little testified in deposition. "I stopped an emotional parent from calling another parent, when it should be law enforcement's responsibility to make those connections and contacts." Police records show that immediately afterwards, at 1:45 p.m., Park City Police Lieutenant Darwin Little discussed these findings with Police Chief Wade Carpenter. This record shows that school officials had also been told that this student died from a drug overdose. Police records show, immediately after coordinating with Chief Carpenter and discussing the possibilities of Pinky being used at school, Park City Police and school jointly began to prepare a community drug alert about Pinky on September 11th. This alert was eventually emailed to the general public late the following evening. Park City School Principal Emily Sutherland told the Deseret News. She was also notified by a text from another teacher on the morning of September 11th that the student had died of an overdose. Immediately after leaving the scene of the deceased student, records state that Park City Police went directly to an older, anonymous student to interview him about his knowledge of Pinky and the death of the deceased student. Park City Police's actions here indicate they apparently knew that Pinky had been circulating amongst students for quite some time prior to the death of this first student from Pinky. The report states that the anonymous student told police that the student must have died from Pinky, also known as U-47700, and that a swab of Pinky from your little finger was enough to kill you. This student's statements of Pinky's lethality and availability are later quoted by Park City Police and school officials in their statements to the public. The next morning, September 12, 2016, school counselor Nikolai Jensen testified that the school and police had the names of at least 20 students they believed to be in contact with Pinky and were in danger. Police records corroborate these 20 names. Ryan Ainsworth was on this list. Park City Police Lieutenant Darwin Little testified that on September 11th and 12th, he was also concerned that Ryan and other students were at risk of death from Pinky. School principal Emily Sutherland told the Deseret News. She was also worried about the safety of Ryan and 20 other Park City students on that morning of September the 12th. Principal Emily Sutherland told the Deseret News. She confiscated Ryan's school computer on the morning of September the 12th and gave it to the police. Ryan and some of the other 20 students that the school and police believed were in danger from Pinky reported their computers were also confiscated as they entered the front door of their school. It appears that the school and police may have been fixated on securing evidence about a legal but deadly chemical, rather than saving the lives of Ryan or the other 20 Park City students. Principal Emily Sutherland also testified that on the morning of September 12th, she and counselor Nikolai Jensen were both concerned that Ryan could be in contact with the same substance that killed the first student the day before, and they called Ryan's father to meet with them at the school. Mr. Ainsworth arrived within minutes of their call. Principal Sutherland's record of that meeting documents that she and Counselor Jensen only told Mr. Ainsworth that Ryan might be suicidal from grief. Principal Sutherland's record also documents that there was no mention that police discovered Ryan had been in recent contact with Pinky at school, or that Ryan had been in recent contact with the deceased student. The school had been aware of Ryan's medical history over the prior 2 years, along with his special risk considerations. Principal Sutherland and Counselor Jensen only discussed Ryan might be suicidal, without ever mentioning that Ryan had been in recent contact with Pinky or with the deceased student. So it appeared that the school's concern was only based upon Ryan's medical history, as a precaution. Counselor Jensen's testimony corroborates that he and Principal Sutherland told Mr. Ainsworth they were concerned that Ryan might be suicidal. His testimony also corroborates. Near the end of the meeting, he and Principal Sutherland stated, "Police believe the first student may have died from a substance called Pinky, but police asked that this information not be shared, and that they did not tell Mr. Ainsworth that Ryan was in contact with Pinky." All available records make no mention that any student or the schools were ever searched for this lethal chemical during September 11th or 12th. Although school and police officials knew that Pinky was lethal to the touch and was reported to be in the school bathroom, no effort was made to search Ryan, the school, or any other student over the next 2 days of school. Counselor Jensen's testimony also corroborates. The school contacted the hospital and only told them Ryan might be suicidal, but did not tell the hospital that police discovered Ryan had been in contact with Pinky. Mr. Ainsworth immediately took Ryan directly to Park City Medical Center to have him evaluated for suicide and also for potential exposure to Pinky. Ryan's medical record states that Ryan was not suicidal, and he believed that his friend had died in his sleep from asthma. From the hospital, Ryan's father texted to Mr. Jensen that he could not find a substance called Pinky on the internet. So Mr. Jensen asked law enforcement for the actual name for Pinky. "20 minutes later, Mr. Jensen texted back that the Park City Police Department believed the first student may have died from U47700. Mr. Ainsworth located that name on the internet and immediately notified Mr. Jensen and the hospital. Ryan's hospital record corroborates that the school called the hospital and discussed U47700. But the school did not tell the hospital that Ryan was believed to be in contact with this substance. Mr. Ainsworth asked the hospital to perform special testing for U47700. Dr. Jeffrey Crockett stated Pinky was so new at that time, a test for it was not yet available. So without having any way to know Ryan was in recent contact with Pinky or with the deceased student, the hospital believed Ryan was safe, and Ryan also believed he was safe, thinking his friend died of asthma. The hospital social worker, Stacy McMillan, also reported Ryan believed his friend died of an asthma attack, and also agreed Ryan was safe to go home with his father. But she also documented that Ryan had been physically abused by his estranged caregiver twice in the preceding months, and that the hospital reported this to Utah's Division of Child and Family Services, as required by law. Previously, many other local medical professionals had also reported Ryan's prior abuse to DCFS, dating as far back as January of 2014. Ms. McMillan's observation that Ryan appeared to minimize his abuse is in reference to Ryan's fear of additional retribution for this report. At 11:35 a.m., while at the hospital, Ryan's estranged caregiver texted to Mr. Ainsworth that Ryan was safe. From the hospital, Ryan's father texted Mr. Jensen. The hospital believed Ryan was okay, and still, there was no communication to Mr. Ainsworth or to the hospital that Ryan was believed to be in danger from Pinky. Three and a half hours later, at 5:31 p.m. Monday, September the 12th, the Park City Police Department and School District finally issued their community drug alert by email, after hours, and to the public in general. The email's text mentions Pinky in other counties elsewhere in Utah, but avoids discussion that Pinky was reported to be circulating amongst Park City students at school, and that Pinky was not an illegal drug at that time. The email also shows police and school officials knew that Pinky is so extremely toxic that it's too dangerous to touch with bare skin. And they also knew that kids thought Pinky was safe because it was not an illegal drug. Although school and police officials directed parents to request a locker search at school if they believed their child might be in contact with Pinky, school and police officials had not searched the schools themselves over the past 2 days, despite Pinky had been reported in the school bathroom, and they had identified 20 students by name to be in contact with Pinky. The email was electronically signed by Park City Police Captain Phil Kirk and Park City School District Superintendent Dr. Amber Conley. So while having the texts from the deceased student to Ryan, that Pinky was in the school bathroom, and this first student died while using Pinky, plus the anonymous student's testimony that Pinky killed this first student and was circulating amongst Park City school children. Park City police and school officials felt they had enough information to release an email about Pinky to the general public. However, while they had the names of 20 students they believed to be in contact with this lethal chemical, they somehow chose not to notify any of these students' parents directly. And later that same evening, after the school and police had finally emailed their alert about Pinky, Counselor Jensen was still so concerned that Ryan was in danger from Pinky that he reported this to Jonna Russo's from the school district and police officer Zach Nakaishi. By not contacting Mr. Ainsworth directly, Mr. Jensen's testimony further corroborates that officials had directed him not to share this information with Ryan's father or the parents of the other 20 students. And still, no one from the police or the school made any effort for Ryan's safety. By that evening, records show that as many as 17 Park City school and police officials knew that Ryan and 20 other students could die from a chemical at school that could kill on skin contact. And that these officials were the only ones with this information, and the only ones who could act that night to save more students from dying. And these officials knew that Mr. Ainsworth and the other parents and the hospital all believed the children were safe. Without access to these private conversations between school and police officials, Mr. Ainsworth had no reason to believe anyone was withholding information about Ryan's safety. After all, what kind of person could possibly remain silent and allow a second child to die? That evening, Mr. Ainsworth also did a precautionary search of the house and found nothing to indicate Ryan could be in danger. Considering, on that day, Pinky was so new it could not be found on the internet under that name. And Mr. Ainsworth believed that Ryan hadn't been in contact with the deceased student in more than 5 months. And, after a 3-hour evaluation earlier that day, the hospital had diagnosed Ryan was safe. And, with all the communications Mr. Ainsworth had from the school and police, there was never any notification from them that they believed Ryan was in danger from Pinky. So, after a full day of evaluating Ryan's safety, with the school, the police, and the hospital, Mr. Ainsworth believed Ryan was safe as he went to bed. Police records show. Later that evening, a 13-year-old school friend of Ryan's checked in with him to see how he was feeling after the death of their classmate. Ryan told her that he was feeling okay. So, even while Ryan's friends contacted him that night to see if he was okay, and while Ryan and his friends and family and the hospital all believed Ryan was safe, Park City police and school officials still chose to remain silent about their information that Ryan and 20 other students were in danger of death from the lethal chemical Pinky. Violators cannot live with the truth. Victims cannot live without it. Tuesday, September 13th, 2016. At 7 a.m., Mr. Ainsworth discovered Ryan died in his sleep and called 911. Ryan was the second Park City 13-year-old to die from Pinky within 48 hours. Ryan's death made national news. That same day, Park City Police Chief Wade Carpenter and School Superintendent Ember Conley convened a press conference.
This morning, we had another 13-year-old boy by the name of Ryan Ainsworth that was also found dead while sleeping on his couch. Similar circumstances, both of these young men know each other. There was no paraphernalia that would indicate there was any drug use.
What do you suspect happened?
So we don't know at this time.
The press asked if there was any correlation between the police and school district's community drug alert about Pinky, emailed to the general public late the prior evening, after business hours.
You sent out an alert about this synthetic opioid called
We did.
Pink.
Correct, yesterday. Looking at social media websites, and the reason that we put the information out on Pink was due to the fact that the term Pink popped up in a couple of different locations through students' text messages and information they were sharing. And so as we looked into this, we believe this was the 47700 drug that we were concerned about, also known as Pink or Pinky.
Chief Carpenter and Superintendent Conley carefully avoid mentioning that the Park City Police Incident Report on September 11th documented that the, quote, couple of different locations where Pink popped up in social media text messages were specifically between the two deceased students, and that the anonymous student told police that Pinky was U47700, that the first student must have died from it, and that a pinky finger swab of U47700 was enough to kill you, and that police and school officials had been privately discussing these facts amongst themselves for over 2 days before their silence allowed Ryan Ainsworth to die from Pinky. So, if 2 teams of police officers had searched the scenes of 2 teen deaths within 2 days and could not find any indication of drug use at either location, it is not likely that any parent would have been able to find Pinky. Yet, police did have the text messages between these 2 deceased students, plus another anonymous student's testimony that Pinky killed the first student and was circulating amongst Park City schools. So, these officials were the only ones who could possibly know that Ryan and 20 other Park City students were in danger of death from Pinky. In their drug alert email from the night before, Park City police and school officials knew that students had been led to believe Pinky was safe.
A lot of people are wondering, what is Pink? Can you talk about what this drug is and what your concern is in Park City?
So my understanding is that it's a synthetic drug. It's a opioid derivative or a synthetic opioid. And of course, this is not the only drug that is of concern to us. We have the synthetic fentanyl now that is almost 70 times more potent than fentanyl. Obviously, in the hands of anyone, let alone young children, this could be deadly. This could be very dangerous for parents to handle as well. So if they see something like this that's suspicious, we ask that you leave it where it is, contact your local law enforcement, allow us to come down and with proper protective equipment and process that.
Despite police records from 2 days earlier, showing at least 11 Park City police officers, including Chief Wade Carpenter, and several school officials, including Superintendent Amber Conley, all knew the first student died while using Pinky. Chief Carpenter and Superintendent Conley repeatedly deny any knowledge or correlation of the two students' deaths with their drug alert about Pinky that they emailed to the general public the night before.
You were saying something early on about, as I came in anyway, it was late, you have strong indications that this is in the community, I think is how you put it. Would you explain that again?
Yeah, and what I said is that, as I explained before, as we've gotten deeper into this investigation, and our investigators have looked at different social media sites and looked at different individuals that have come in and spoken with us. We've looked at text messages and browser sites and found that some of these kids are referring to this pink or pinky or other drugs as well, and so certainly that's something that's a concern to us, and so we're taking that very seriously and wanted to make sure that we're putting out as much information on this as we possibly can.
Get adult help. Don't be afraid to tell a counselor. We have amazing counselors. Tell a principal. Tell some trusted adult. And then, of course, if you have information about this drug in particular, you have to tell.
Chief Carpenter and Superintendent Conley are also quoted by Fox 13 News that day, saying, "There is no imminent physical safety threat related to this incident." But then, after all their many denials that they had no indication that Pinky was involved in either of the two students' deaths, and that there was no imminent threat of Pinky to any other students in Park City, Chief Carpenter made a statement which contradicted his and Superintendent Conley's previous denials.
We have gone door to door, actually contacting parents that we thought their children may be at risk, and making sure that the parents are aware of what's going on as well.
However, if there had been no indications of Pinky in the deaths of either of these two students, and no imminent physical safety threat of Pinky to other students in Park City, what risk to children would police and school officials now be going door to door for? On the other hand, if there was a correlation between the death of the first student 2 days earlier and the school and police's emailed alert about Pinky from the night before, why didn't the police go door to door anytime during the preceding 2 days before their silence allowed Ryan Ainsworth to die from Pinky? Official records establish there was a direct correlation between the death of the first student and the email drug alert about Pinky, placing school and police officials in a paradox. If these officials had warned the public of Pinky prior to September 11th, the first student may not have died. If they had warned anyone about the 20 students named to be in danger of Pinky on September 11th or 12th, or at least not blocked others from doing so, Ryan would have remained in the hospital that day and would not have died. But if school and police officials had acknowledged there was a correlation between the deaths of these two students and the lethal chemical Pinky on September 13th, it would reveal that school and police officials had known for at least 2 days that specifically named Park City students were in danger of death from Pinky, and that their silence allowed Ryan Ainsworth to die and 20 other students to remain in contact with this deadly chemical over the last 2 days.
Have you been able to find anything at the scenes of these deaths that put you in any one direction? Or are you saying we have found nothing, or are you saying we can't discuss it?
You mean as far as on the scenes themselves?
As far
we
as the
have-
scenes, any
The
indication at
scenes,
all?
no, there's not any indication on the scenes. However, I would say social media would suggest that there is concern there, not with these two individuals, but the fact that there is drug use in the community and amongst this age of children.
Police records of these door-to-door contacts make no apparent reference that police warned any of these parents about their child being in danger. And the statements of several of those parents and children also corroborate these police records, that they were not warned about Pinky, only that the students' school computers were impounded, and that their files were deleted. Chief Carpenter and Superintendent Conley's carefully worded denials of any correlation between the two students' deaths and Pinky are also consistent with the police and parents' reports that they were not notified by school and police officials that their children were in danger of death from Pinky.
And you've got this drug you're concerned about. Will you go any further as to suspecting whether they were using
Not until, at this point, that would be very premature because we have no idea what the cause of death on either of these young men are.
However, contrary to Chief Carpenter and Superintendent Conley's repeated denials to the press, Park City police records document that police and school officials knew at the scene of the first deceased student on Sunday, September 11, 2016, that the student died while using Pinky that he had in the school bathroom, and while he was Google chat texting with Ryan Ainsworth. An anonymous student also knew the first student died from Pinky, and that a Pinky of U47700 was enough to kill you. Plus, the interview of the anonymous student's knowledge of Pinky indicates police knew Pinky had been circulating amongst students before the death of the first student from Pinky. And on Monday, September 12th, Park City school and police officials knew as many as 20 students, including Ryan Ainsworth, were in danger from Pinky, that Pinky was lethal to the touch, that Ryan and other students believed Pinky was safe, and they privately discussed amongst themselves that evening that Ryan was in danger. And then, on Tuesday, September the 13th, after 2 Park City students had just died from Pinky, which had been reported to be in the school bathroom 2 days earlier, Chief Carpenter and Superintendent Conley went through careful effort to hide that they knew all of this from the press and from the parents. So, while Chief Carpenter and Superintendent Conley made every effort to convince the press that they had no correlation between Pinky and the 2 students' deaths, there was no imminent safety threat to other students, and after Ryan died, they were going door to door to warn parents about something they insisted they knew nothing about. But in their official records, they documented that 2 days earlier, they knew that there was a correlation between Pinky and the death of the first student, that Ryan Ainsworth and 20 other Park City students were in imminent danger from Pinky. And they did not warn any parent or student and they actually instructed others to also not warn any of these parents.
We've had parents contact us directly with information that their children have shared, and we've provided that directly to the police department. We know that this is serious, our parents know this is serious, and if there's a message that we can share is, don't be afraid of telling, don't be afraid of sharing if you have any information of this drug or any other illegal substance, especially those that they've purchased from China. These are significantly dangerous to our children.
Dr. Conley's statements here are directly traceable to police records of events which occurred on this same day. Park City Police records from the same day as Ryan's death and this press conference document dozens of students and parents who were concerned for the safety of the children of Park City, and voluntarily came forward with even more information of the correlation between Pinky and the deaths of the two students. Park City Police records on September the 13th document a mother and daughter, who were concerned for the safety of other children in Park City, came to the school, with the box labeled from China that the Pinky was shipped in. The student they reported ordered this shipment is believed to be the same anonymous student police interviewed 2 days earlier, immediately after leaving the scene of the first deceased student. Several years later, Park City Police retroactively used this voluntary report as evidence in criminal charges against the daughter, despite the fact Pinky was not illegal at that time, and her voluntary report on September 13th was selflessly intended to save the lives of other students from dying from Pinky. Park City Police records also document on September the 13th, another 13-year-old female student voluntarily came forward and told the Park City Police that late the prior evening, Ryan told her he was okay, shortly before he died in his sleep, from Pinky. The female student also reported that another student, reportedly the same anonymous student, had been ordering U47700 from China and had been distributing to students in Park City. This female student also reported to Park City Police that yet another 13-year-old student's life was in danger. That student was also on the Park City Police and school's list of 20 students in contact with Pinky over the last 2 days. Records show that the Park City Police delegated the report to the county sheriff's office. The sheriffs reported finding a dispenser that tested positive for Pinky. This female student's report is credited for saving the life of this student. Summit County Sheriff's Office Incident Report 16L26290 at 12:23 p.m. on this same day of September 13th adds even more independent documentation that the Park City Police Department knew that the deaths of both of these students were directly correlated to Pinky. Summit County Sheriff Deputy Loyola recorded, "On September 13, 2016, I was dispatched to conduct a welfare check on a 13-year-old male at his residence. At the time, Park City Police had been investigating the death of another 13-year-old male found in his residence. Park City Police had reason to believe that the student was in possession of the same substance that may have been linked to their case. The substance is an unverified opioid that goes by the name Pink or Pinky. The sheriff's report indicates that the student and his mother both were completely unaware that this 13-year-old child had been in any danger. The reports of the many Park City students and parents who voluntarily came forward to save the lives of other students, with complete disregard for their own legal safety, is in stark contrast with Park City school and police officials' repeated efforts to avoid revealing they had known as many as 20 children, including Ryan Ainsworth, had been at risk of death from Pinky over the last several days.
Chief, I know that correlation between deaths right now at this point and the drugs are not linked
Right.
at this point, but are you confident with your investigation that this particular drug is in the Park City community circulating somewhere?
Well, I think that the use of this drug, I would be naive to say that it is not.
To recap, on Sunday, September the 11th, police records from the scene of the first student to die while using Pinky, which he reported having in the school bathroom, state that police and school officials prepared a community warning about Pinky. And on the evening of Monday, September the 12th, after school closed, School Superintendent Ember Conley and Police Captain Phil Kirk emailed their warning about Pinky to the general public, directing parents to request a locker search at school and contact the police if they believed their child might be in contact with Pinky. Then, on Tuesday, September the 13th, after Ryan Ainsworth died from Pinky, Chief Carpenter and Superintendent Conley convened a press conference where they repeatedly denied any correlation between Pinky and the deaths of these two students.
As we had no indications of why either of these young men had passed away. There was no signs, nor did we find any signs of drug use in either of these homes.
The Deseret News reported in their interview of Principal Emily Sutherland that on the evening of Tuesday, September the 13th, after school hours, and only after a second student died from Pinky, police finally searched the school for Pinky, while they had been denying all that day that any students were in danger from this lethal chemical. Given that school had been in session for 2 full days after Pinky had been reported in the school bathroom, Park City Police and school officials could not possibly know how many more students and parents could be in danger from Pinky, other than the 20 students they had identified by name on the morning of Monday, September 12th. By the next morning, September 14th, at least 3 additional Park City students are known to have been hospitalized. All 3 were on the police and school's list of 20 in contact with Pinky from the day before Ryan died. Park City Police Captain Phil Kirk is quoted by the news. The investigation is not focused on any criminal intent, but rather on protecting students. And yet Park City Police and school officials still continue to publicly deny any correlation between the deaths of these 2 students and the hospitalizations of 3 more with the lethal substance Pinky. School Superintendent Ember Conley told Fox 13 News, quote, "Once you have a series of student deaths, there is a phenomena that occurs that's called suicide contagion." Her statement is traceable to the school district's Crisis Emergency Management Plan procedures, which states, "A victim of suicide should not be memorialized in any way. Following a suicide, There exists documented strong risk of other students also attempting suicide, particularly if the student who committed suicide is honored or glorified in any way following the death. However, school counselor Nikolai Jensen testified that he attended the memorial for the first student's death, even though the school's records state this student had died from suicide. Less than 12 hours later, Ryan became the second student to die from a reported suicide. And less than 24 hours after that, the news reported a third Park City student had been hospitalized for yet another suicide attempt. With 2 students dead and her surviving students in a state of utter panic, School Superintendent Amber Conley appears to be enjoying herself with the attention from the press.
I want to giggle a little bit.
The U.S. Code of Federal Regulations provides that law enforcement can withhold records only to the extent that releasing them would cause harm in at least one of the following situations: enforcement proceedings, fair trial or impartial adjudication, personal privacy, confidential sources and information, techniques and procedures, life and physical safety. Considering there was no criminal investigation at that time, there could be no enforcement proceedings. Nor was there any apparent adjudication or privacy issues. Plus, withholding information which could prevent students from dying seems contradictory to the CFR's intent to avoid causing harm and to ensure life and physical safety. Based upon these considerations, there doesn't appear to be any legitimate law enforcement purpose to withhold information under these circumstances. In fact, Park City Police actually testified it was their duty to notify Mr. Ainsworth directly that Ryan was in danger of death from Pinky. Park City Police Department Lieutenant Darwin Little testified during September 11th and 12th. He was concerned that Ryan and 20 other minors in the community were at risk of death from Pinky, and he stopped an emotional parent calling another parent when it is law enforcement's responsibility to make those connections and contacts. Lieutenant Little also testified he wished he had called Mr. Ainsworth himself, and he believed Ryan would not have died if anyone from the Park City Police Department had called Mr. Ainsworth. During Ryan's last hours of life, school counselor Jensen reported his concerns of Ryan's safety to school and police officials. But no one called Mr. Ainsworth, despite having his cell phone number. This further corroborates police and school officials had chosen to keep silent on the danger of Pinky to Ryan and the 20 other Park City students. On the day Ryan died, at 4:12 p.m., the brother of the first deceased student, who Park City Police told not to contact Ryan's family 2 days before, texted, "I really think I should talk to Ryan's family. Things may have gone differently if we talked to Ryan yesterday." All available documentation corroborates that for 2 days in September 2016, numerous Park City police and school officials believed that Ryan was in danger from Pinky, and none of them told this to Mr. Ainsworth or the hospital. And a simple phone call was all it would have taken to save Ryan's life. If a simple phone call would have saved Ryan's life, if it was the duty of the police to make that call, if, even after Ryan died, it was still the duty of the police and the school to notify the public that at least 20 students were identified, and possibly more, to be in danger of death from a substance that is lethal to the touch, and was reported to be circulating amongst students in school. If Park City Police and school officials' false denials are not supported by CFR 402.105's provisions for life and physical safety, and these officials believed they had done nothing wrong, what else could explain why police and school officials repeatedly and falsely denied that they had any knowledge of the threat of Pinky to the students of Park City?
As we had no indications of why either of these young men had passed away. There was no signs, nor did we find any signs of drug use in either of these homes.
If Park City Police and school officials believed they had acted legally, or at least morally, over the last 48 hours, if these officials had nothing to hide, why would they make statements to the press that their own official records prove are entirely false? Research shows avoiding punishment is the most frequent reason people tell serious lies. The Deseret News interview of Park City School Principal Emily Sutherland reported that on September 11th, it appeared, the first student died of an overdose, and Sutherland knew there was a lot of pressure to keep up appearances. Under oath, Principal Emily Sutherland later testified that she did not learn about Pinky or U47700 until several weeks after her 2 students had died. Principal Sutherland's testimony here contradicts her own earlier testimony that on the morning of September 12th, we were really concerned about Ryan, and if he had possibly been in contact with the same substance the first student was using when he died. Principal Sutherland's testimony is also contradicted by Counselor Jensen's testimony in his text messages. When we sat down in Ms. Sutherland's office, we shared that the police believed the first student died from a substance called pink, and, checking with law enforcement, the substance may be called U47700. Principal Sutherland's testimony is also contradicted by the hospital's records around noon on September the 12th. Principal Sutherland's testimony is also contradicted by the school and police community drug alert about Pinky, emailed the evening of September 12th. And finally, Principal Sutherland's denial that she didn't know about Pinky until weeks later corroborates that she and Counselor Jensen did not inform Mr. Ainsworth nor the hospital that Ryan had been in contact with Pinky in the school bathroom with the first deceased student a few days earlier. False or inconsistent material statements. A person is guilty of a felony of the second degree if in any official proceeding he makes a false material statement under oath, or he makes inconsistent material statements under oath. In the case of inconsistent statements, the prosecution does not need to prove which statement is false. What could possibly be a greater risk for telling the truth over the chance of being caught for a second-degree felony for perjury? More examples of inconsistent statements by Park City officials. On September 13th, Superintendent Conley told the public, district officials stress that students are as safe as can be at school. But the very next day, after the school finally had been searched, Superintendent Conley told the press, drug-sniffing dogs swept through the high school and junior highs. We found a substance in one of the lockers. On September 12th, Park City Police and school officials emailed, Pinky is not yet an illegal substance. But then, on September 14th, Park City officials told the press, Pink was added to the list of temporarily Schedule I drugs by the Drug Enforcement Agency last week. And then, 3 months later, on November the 10th, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration published that U-47700 would be placed into Schedule I of the Controlled Substances Act, effective on November the 14th. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration defines a hazardous chemical as any chemical which can cause a physical or a health hazard. The school and police email, late on the evening of September the 12th, hours before Ryan died, stated, it is known that Pinky is extremely toxic, even in small doses. Do not touch the substance with bare hands. And on September the 13th, hours after Ryan died, Police Chief Wade Carpenter told the press,
This could be very dangerous for parents to handle as well. So if they see something like this that's suspicious, we ask that you leave it where it is, contact your local law enforcement, allow us to come down and with proper protective equipment and process that.
Park City Police Policy 406.2, Hazardous Materials Response. When members come into contact with a suspected hazardous material, they should take certain steps to protect themselves and other persons. Park City Police Policy 406.5, Hazardous Material Response Considerations. At any scene involving suspected hazardous materials, make reasonable efforts to secure the scene to prevent access. Begin evacuation of the immediate and surrounding areas. Park City School District Crisis Emergency Management Plan. Hazardous Materials Release or Chemical Spill Procedure. Call 911 and advise of the situation. Notify the principal, who in turn notifies the superintendent. If incident is in the school, seal off the area of the leak or spill until fire or hazmat personnel take charge of the incident and contain the scene. Yet, despite these school and police policies, which specifically address this type of crisis, neither the schools nor any of the students were searched until after 2 full school days, and only after a second student had died from pinky. Utah law. Endangerment of a child or vulnerable adult. An actor commits endangerment of a child if the actor knowingly or intentionally permits a child to be exposed to or have contact with a chemical substance. A violation is a first-degree felony if, as a result of the conduct, the child dies. The Park City Police Department Policy Manual. Forward. From Chief Wade Carpenter. Police department personnel are responsible for the protection of lives, property, and the rights of all persons. Park City Police Department. Law Enforcement Code of Ethics. As a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve the community, to safeguard lives, and to protect the innocent against deception. Park City Police Department. Policy 320.3.1 Unlawful or conflicting orders. Supervisors shall not knowingly issue orders or directives that, if carried out, would result in a violation of any law or department policy. Park City Police Policy 337. Child and Dependent Adult Safety. This policy provides guidelines to ensure that children are not left without appropriate care, in the event their caregiver or guardian is prevented from providing care, due to actions taken by members of this department. Park City School District Crisis Emergency Management Plan. Section 4. Postvention Response Communicating. Factual information, communicated in a sensitive, compassionate, humane manner, will help dispel rumors. All questions should be answered honestly. Answer all questions as honestly as you can. Give honest, short answers. Be honest at all times. Be honest. Park City Police Department. Policy 320.5 Causes for Discipline. The wrongful or unlawful exercise of authority on the part of any member for malicious purpose, personal gain, or willful deceit. Confidential records show on August 7, 2017, Park City Police accepted false information from an adult informant who had been the subject themselves of many related investigations over the preceding 4 years, including Ryan's death, and a prior history of other false criminal reports against Ryan, litigation against Ryan's medical providers and caregivers, court-issued restraining orders, a plea bargain, and other legal actions. The plea bargain with the Utah Division of Child and Family Services, March 14, 2014. The order for no contact with Ryan and his older sibling, May 5, 2014. Earlier examples of retribution against Ryan through false reports to the Summit County Sheriff in 2015. March 10, 2015. Interview with Ryan Ainsworth by Summit County Sheriff and Utah DCFS. Ryan called his estranged caregiver a pedophile several times while talking about her. Ryan stated that his estranged caregiver was stalking them in violation of restraining orders for his safety. And Ryan was upset and frustrated at the fact he was at the Children's Justice Center, once again, reporting his abuse and the violations of restraining orders, without receiving any support from law enforcement or local community services. 7 days later, on March 17th, and again on April 28th, Dr. Brian Thorne's medical records for Ryan document he personally discussed with Ryan's estranged caregiver, that Ryan refers to her as pedophile. And also, on the same day, of April the 28th, a Summit County Sheriff interview with Ryan's estranged caregiver and her attorney Margaret Olson recorded. I asked Ryan's estranged caregiver if she has ever known Ryan to use the word pedophile. She stated that word was not in Ryan's vocabulary. I explained that she may be a victim of stalking. This August 7th police report shows altered text messages were recorded by Park City Police, which intentionally omitted that the adult informant had personally known themselves, for at least 7 days before Ryan's death, that Ryan was in contact with Pinky, and also did not tell this to Mr. Ainsworth or the hospital until after Ryan had died. This is the screenshot of these omitted text messages, showing that the adult informant had personally known, for at least 7 days before Ryan's death, that Ryan was in contact with Pinky, and did not tell Mr. Ainsworth or to the hospital until after Ryan was already dead. This omitted text message also strongly correlates with the Park City Police interview of the anonymous student on the day of the first student's death. Officer Nakaishi, quote, I asked the anonymous student about the reference, pink or pinky, which was used in the first deceased student's Google message with Ryan Ainsworth. The student immediately stated that the first student must have used U47700. Comparatively, just 18 hours earlier, this adult informant told Mr. Ainsworth that Ryan was safe during his safety evaluation at the Park City Hospital the day before. And, despite the text message saying Ryan was safe, Ryan's court-appointed therapist, Chelsea Bundy, later testified in deposition that she and Ryan's estranged caregiver actually discussed that Ryan's life was in danger from Pinky while Ryan was being evaluated at the hospital. And neither Ms. Bundy nor Ryan's estranged caregiver told this to Mr. Ainsworth or to the hospital on Ryan's last day of life. Retribution against Ryan and his siblings. This adult informant is also the same individual that Park City Medical Center reported to DCFS on Ryan's last day of life for the 2 incidents of physical abuse on Ryan earlier that summer. And this false report to police is an example of the retribution Ryan fearfully anticipated during his hospital evaluation on his last day of life. On a side note, 2 independent expert reviews of Ryan's court-appointed therapist, Chelsea Bundy, found that Ms. Bundy had committed multiple acts of malpractice and violations of law. Her violations were so many in number, they had to be summarized into 13 categories, including failure to report Ryan's danger of death from Pinky, failure to report the child abuse of Ryan, HIPAA violations, and falsifying medical records, lying to Ryan's custody evaluator, and lying in other legal proceedings. Dr. Stuart Drescher's findings include failure to maintain appropriate role boundaries, failure to communicate with Ryan's father and other authorities, and multiple failures to diagnose and treat Ryan. Dr. Stephen Zakula's findings include failure to document, communicate, and warn, withholding information from Ryan's father, child-patient privacy violations, failure to refer Ryan for specialized treatment she was not qualified to perform herself, failure to report to law enforcement for Ryan's child abuse by his estranged caregiver, professional conflicts of interest, failure to inform Ryan's runaway incidents when he was fleeing for his safety from his estranged caregiver, multiple falsifications and omissions from Ryan's treatment records, multiple violations of professional organizational standards, and failure to establish and sustain proper informed consent agreements, which failed to reflect the type of work the court had appointed her to perform in the first place. Ms. Bundy was also discovered to have a prior record of professional and criminal misconduct by the state of Washington, less than 14 months before the Court of Utah appointed her to be Ryan's therapist. This adult informant's false report was also a retribution against Ryan's older sibling for a letter he wrote to the court 11 days earlier, on July 17, 2017. His letter also expressed his concern to the court that their younger sibling was also encountering the same abuse that he and his deceased little brother Ryan had been subjected to by this adult informant. Police records of this adult informant's interview contain at least 22 false or misleading statements embedded in just 15 short bullet points, spanning slightly more than a single page. Official documents show police already had proof that these statements were false. This adult informant was later disciplined by the 3rd District Court of Utah in other legal proceedings from 2019 to 2021 for as many as 10 counts of contempt, for multiple counts of lying to the court, violations of court orders, and for multiple acts of abuse to Ryan's younger sibling. Despite Park City Police had already possessed the documentation to know this report was false, plus the obvious conflicts of interest, Park City Police falsely recommended criminal prosecution for child endangerment against one of the deceased student's parents, for the very acts which records showed had been performed by the Park City Police Department and the informant as well. Police records show the responsible officer for both this false report on August 7, 2017, and Ryan's death on September 13, 2016, was police officer Jeremy Eaton. Law enforcement records also show another potential conflict of interest between the attorney representing Ryan's estranged caregiver, who participated in the false report against Ryan on April 28, 2015, recorded as Margaret Olson, and the Summit County prosecutor for the false report against Ryan on August 7, 2017, also recorded as Margaret Olson. Even more astonishing, 4 months before the deaths of these two students from Pinky, official court records show this parent attempted to report shipments of apparently dangerous substances to the Park City Police Department, but was actually rejected by police officer Cameron Thor. Afterwards, it appears the anonymous student was doing the ordering and subsequently found other unwitting addresses. Just think what might have happened if the Park City Police Department had actually investigated this parent's report, rather than reject it on May 25, 2016. The two students might have never had contact with Pinky, and they both could very well be alive today. The Park City Police reports false blame of this parent created a chain reaction which initiated or affected at least 15 civil and criminal proceedings throughout the Park City community. And finally, when the Park City Police Department was officially notified of this falsified police report and its impact throughout the community on all these legal proceedings, records show the Park City Police made no effort to investigate or enforce the reported violations. August 11, 2017, just 4 days after the false police report, Amber Conley conducted an interview with Deseret News. Quote, "By the end of the day, Monday, September 12, 2016, we had debriefed and continued to check in with the close friends of the victim and their families. All available records and testimonies show that the school and police did not notify any of these parents of the 20 kids they believed were in danger from Pinky. Then these officials denied any correlation between Pinky and the deaths of the two students. Their statements to the public oxymoronically contradict themselves. After all, they could not claim they warned these parents about the threat of Pinky to these 20 students, and also claim they didn't know anything about Pinky's correlation to the deaths of the two students. Here, Amber Conley refers to the school district's crisis emergency management plan, shown earlier in this presentation, where numerous procedures that had been specifically created to prevent this type of crisis had been completely disregarded. And here, Amber Conley boasts about her magazine articles and lecture engagements, from the notoriety she obtained from the deaths of these two students. Without access to these facts, the press was deceived to believe the many lawsuits that rippled throughout the community were based upon blame, rather than the consequence of these false allegations and false statements made to the public. On January 4, 2018, Park City Police Chief Wade Carpenter awarded the Chief's Choice Trophy to School Superintendent Amber Conley for collaboration with the Park City Police, co-creating press releases and establishing cohesive messages. These press releases and cohesive messages include their many false denials to the public of their knowledge of the correlation of the lethal chemical pinky with the deaths of the two students in September of 2016. The trophy is currently on public display in the foyer of the Park City Police Department. The following year, after receiving the Park City Chief's Choice Award for her contributions to the community, School Superintendent Amber Conley was in the news again. November 18, 2019, Mesa, Arizona, 12news.com wrote, Mesa Public Schools take steps to fire superintendent. The abrupt action to oust Amber Conley came at a special school board meeting Monday morning. A firing could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And on November 26, 2019, the Phoenix Times wrote, Mesa School Superintendent Amber Conley was ousted last week amid news that the school district's administrative spending was almost $1 million over budget last year. A complaint since has been filed with the Arizona Attorney General's office alleging that Conley committed theft and embezzlement. And on March 16, 2020, the East Valley Tribune wrote, an audit by Mesa Public Schools found that former Superintendent Amber Conley gave out $145,000 in unapproved raises, including one for $44,000. A body of men holding themselves accountable to nobody ought not to be trusted by anybody. Qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is not a law, but a judicially created doctrine that shields government officials from being held personally liable for damages in civil lawsuits, so long as the officials did not violate clearly established law. Almost 5 years after two Park City students died from pinky, Park City Police Chief Wade Carpenter was interviewed by a local citizen.
Because right now, if a law enforcement officer grossly deviates and is criminal in nature, or they create a criminal intent, they can still be held accountable. That's what people don't understand.
Can you cite any examples of Park City Police Department using qualified immunity to defend officers accused of constitutional rights violations?
Do you have something specific? I don't.
It was a question.
No, I don't.
Again, Wade Carpenter's denials are not supported by official records. Just 10 months earlier, Chief Carpenter personally used qualified immunity to shelter himself and other police and school officials from ever facing these facts in court. Chief Wade Carpenter actually attended this hearing himself. If Chief Carpenter believed he had acted legally, or at least morally, during the deaths of these two students in 2016, if Chief Carpenter had nothing to hide, why would he continue making false statements 5 years later? Park City's claim for qualified immunity's special protection, which is only for police and other government employees, is not an exoneration. It merely sheltered the Park City Police and school from having to stand trial for the actions, records, and contradictory statements of the Park City Police Department and school district officials involving the deaths of the two Park City 13-year-old students from Pinky in September 2016. The facts obtained in this report have never been heard in court or openly discussed in a public forum. It is often easier to become outraged by injustice a half-world away than oppression a half-block from home. Once again, Park City officials used their privileged access to the press to convey an image to the public, which is directly contradicted by their actions in official proceedings behind closed doors. During the same time, Park City was using qualified immunity and public funding to shelter local police and school officials from facing any accountability for the deaths of these two students in court. Park City was also using the press and public funding to demand accountability for Minneapolis police for the murder of George Floyd. So when Park City was given the opportunity to stand for the safety of its own children, Park City chose, instead, to stand in defense of these local officials. To recap, the official records show Park City police and school officials knew, on September 11, 2016, the first Park City student died while using Pinky that he had in the school bathroom. On September 12th, at least 20 more students, including Ryan Ainsworth, were in danger from Pinky. Pinky was not illegal, and these students thought Pinky was safe. The hospital mistakenly believed Ryan was safe, and the police believed it was their duty to notify Ryan's father and the other parents, but they did not. On September 13th, after Ryan was the second student to die from Pinky, police and school officials told the press, "There is no imminent safety threat related to this incident. We have no indications of why either of these young men had passed away." On September 14th, after 3 more students had been hospitalized, Police and school officials told the press the investigation was not focused on any criminal intent. And, although the Utah law for child endangerment states, an actor commits endangerment of a child if they knowingly or intentionally permit a child to be exposed to, inhale, ingest, or have contact with a chemical substance. And a violation is a first-degree felony if as a result of the conduct the child dies. Yet, inversely, Park City Police actually forwarded falsified child endangerment allegations against a parent, who they had all the evidence to know was innocent, and which subsequently triggered a chain reaction of civil and criminal legal cases over the next several years.
Because right now, if a law enforcement officer grossly deviates and is criminal in nature, or they create a criminal intent, they can still be held accountable. That's what people don't understand.
Violators cannot live with the truth. Victims cannot live without it. In July of 2022, another Park City student died from suicide. She was the heroic student whose report to the Park City Police and School on September 13, 2016, saved the life of another 13-year-old schoolmate. While Chief Carpenter and Superintendent Conley had been denying any correlation between Pinky and the deaths of the other two students from Pinky. She is the third Park City teen connected to this story to die. From 2016 through 2022, at least 8 Park City students are known to have died from suicide. 3 of these deaths had a direct connection to this story. Many more Park City students have been hospitalized for suicide attempts. The full totals are not known. The suicide death rate of the Park City High School class of 2021 is at least 138 times higher than the national average of suicide deaths for this age group. A comparison with other death rates provides a deeper understanding to the enormity of this figure. The Park City teen suicide death rate is 15 times higher than all causes of death for this age group in the U.S., 27 times higher than U.S. soldiers from combat, 54 times higher than police in the line of duty, and nearly double the rate of prisoners awaiting execution on death row. Since the first publication of this report, it has been discovered that the Park City High School class of 2017 has also had at least 3 suicide deaths out of their class of approximately 400 students. Although some of these deaths were from overdose, others were from self-inflicted injury. These children came from wealthy and from poor families, from married and divorced parents. About half were male and half were female. The impact to the community from the silence and deceit of Park City Police and school officials in September of 2016 can be traced to at least 3 Park City student deaths, 1 student suicide attempt, 3 Park City student hospitalizations, at least 15 criminal or civil legal cases, 8 Child Protective Services cases, involving 4 children in 2 states, and 1 trophy. Silence becomes cowardice when occasion demands speaking out. In September of 2016, Park City school and police officials chose to remain silent, while 2 students died, 3 were hospitalized, and many more remained in danger of death from a brand new and lethal chemical called Pinky. Perhaps these officials believed someone else would warn these students, their parents, or the hospital. Perhaps these officials believed they might face backlash if they warned these children or their families themselves. In the aftermath, the motive behind these officials' false statements and allegations against others seems less unclear. And an untold number of Park City students and families will endure the trauma of these events for the rest of their lives. Since the first student's death in September of 2016, Park City school and police officials successfully chose silence over safety, deceit over death, accolades and false accusations over accountability. While Park City children continue to take their own lives at a rate over 100 times greater than the national average for their peer group. Every community gets the kind of law enforcement it insists on. If you are silent in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. As difficult as it is to believe these events could ever happen, you have now seen for yourself that the official records, news articles, and video recordings all show that this actually did happen. Now that you have the story Park City officials did not want you to know, will you also choose silence? Or will you speak out? The next child's life you save might very well be your own.